All right. Well, let me, for anyone who joined us, and we still have more people who are coming in, so let me take that off. There we go. Everyone, I am, again, Nicole Kraft, and thrilled to welcome you to another Thursday with the Sports and Society Huddles. As I mentioned earlier, Sports and Society is an initiative. It's through our College of Arts and Sciences here at the university, and we have a multi-pronged approach to connecting people with sport and society and seeing how those two things come together. And among the things that we do are connect with our incredible alums who have gone on to careers in sport that I know that when I meet some people, I didn't even know some things were a career. And I certainly didn't know that Buckeyes did them. And that was the case of when I met my friend Eric Oberman here, who administers one of arguably the most prestigious award for basketball that is bestowed among high school and collegiate athletes. And so we are thrilled to welcome Eric to talk about himself and the Naismith Awards. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Nicole. It's an honor to be here and great to see everybody on the screen. Hope everyone's doing well and staying safe and healthy.
Well, and we hope the same for you. So you're in Atlanta, that is correct?
That is correct.
And how are things in Atlanta? What's going on down there?
Well, they're opening the state tomorrow. The governor just announced today that he's ready to open things up and get our economy going, which has created, as you can imagine, a number of concern by district, by jurisdiction, by city, by town. Some people feel like it's too soon. Other people feel like they need to get back to work. So it's going to be really interesting, but Georgia is probably the leading state right now in trying to get back to some type of normalcy.
How have you been affected? I mean, obviously, personally, I'm sure you've been affected, as we all have. But from the standpoint, you know, that the Naismith Awards were scheduled to be given out live, and of course, that did not happen. So it's supposed to be during March Madness, is my understanding. So a lot of changes took place. Can you tell me about kind of those changes and how you were able to adapt?
Yeah, great question. It's interesting. I think college basketball was the first sport to really come to an abrupt halt right at the precipice of the biggest 3 weeks of the season, right? So we had done a season's worth of activation. It was phenomenal. I couldn't have been more proud of what we had accomplished. And of course, March Madness was right there. And you're correct. We were supposed to announce the Naismith Trophy winner for Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, and Defensive Player of the Year at the Final Four right here in Atlanta, the first week of April. And with literally no time, right? I mean, we found out on Wednesday, March 11th, that the tournament would be played without fans. And 24 hours later, we found out there would be no tournament. And 24 hours after that, I was scratching my head like, well, now what do we do? Because that's the crux of everything we do is those 3 weeks, and it culminates with Final Four weekend. But a story that I'll probably tell for years to come is how we made lemonade out of lemons through a person on our board who was with CBS Sports. We had a couple of conversations. I think it was March 27th. So we had about 2 weeks to kind of adjust to the new normal. And we asked if there's anything CBS could do to help give us a platform to announce our winners, because the easy way would have just been to do a press release. But it's boring, and it wouldn't have really given the winners that level of gratification. So literally within about 2 days, we produced 3 full TV shows that aired live on CBS Sports HQ, which is the digital streaming device for CBS Sports. And on 3 days in a row, we announced our Defensive Player of the Year, our Coach of the Year, and our Player of the Year. And it turned out to be over 800,000 live digital streams of people who saw that. So we went from the highs of hoping that we'd have a Final Four to the lows of just a regular press release to the highs again of being introduced to CBS Sports HQ. And it was a phenomenal, way to end the season. It wasn't ideal, but it's a great lesson for the students out there that, and I told them, I said, during this pandemic, pay attention to how people work. Pay attention to how people speak, how companies operate, how we ourselves are going to operate. don't just curl up in a ball and say, boy, this is not fair. I'll wait till next year. And I really pushed them from the president on down. How are people speaking? How are people taking ownership? How are people coming up with solutions? And I'm really proud with what we were able to do. And I hope it was a great learning for the team and for anybody on this Zoom today, that there was no path. My board constantly thanked me for flying the plane with no manual, which is ironic because, of course, nobody's flying. And I said to them, well, what else would we have done? It's not like we could just close up shop and leave a void on 2020 that we didn't have any Naismith winners.
Right.
And so the success of what we're able to do, and also the way we pivoted and were able to do it, were probably the most impactful things we've done this season. And really, out of the course of my career, probably top 5.
It sounds amazing. And I want to make sure that everybody understands the magnitude of the Naismith Awards. I think, even there may be some people who've heard of them, but don't quite know exactly who they honor and how that system works. Can you kind of walk us through the Naismith Awards and what they're the really important place that they have in basketball?
Absolutely. So I'm the executive director of the Atlanta Tipoff Club. It's a 501c3 nonprofit based here in Atlanta. It's not unlike the Columbus Touchdown Club. It's there in Columbus. And it was created in 1956 as a way to celebrate basketball in a city that's obsessed with college football. I did not start in 1956, although there's days I feel like I'm that old. But over the decades, the brand wanted to extend beyond high school basketball in Atlanta and the state of Georgia and take the brand national. So in 1969, they came up with an idea to create a National College Men's Player of the Year Award. And when they were sitting in a boardroom trying to figure out what to call it, Dr. James Naismith, who invented the game of basketball, his grand niece was on our board of directors at the time. No joke. And so they went around the table and said, well, what do you think we should call it? What do you think we should call it? And they looked at her and said, what if we named it the Naismith Trophy after your grand uncle? And she said, that's great, let's do it. And so that was the birth of the Naismith Trophy in 1969. Over the years, we've added Coach of the Year, High School Player of the Year, High School Coach of the Year, and 2 Lifetime Achievement Awards. One is for the college officials, and one is for contributions to the game. And of course, we honor a men's game winner, and a women's game winner. So all told, each year we have 14 Naismith Awards that we present. But we like to call it, and so do many people in this country, it's really the Heisman Trophy of college basketball. It's the preeminent award. It's the most prestigious individual award given to someone in the game of basketball. And we're thrilled to be at the forefront to administer that, which means we handle all the voting from the first watch list in November all the way through the winner in April. We administer all the awards, handle everything that goes with it, and that's my job. That's what I do for a living. I got my big break leaving Chicago. I got a job with Nike out in Beaverton, Oregon. And from there, I then took a job at Home Depot, which got me to Atlanta. And I've been in Atlanta 16 years now. And I got a job working at Home Depot. So a lot of it is connections. I mean, that's the first thing I would tell our students is, back when I was your age, we didn't have LinkedIn. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any of the tools that are so valuable today. If you're not on LinkedIn right now, as soon as we're done, you need to set up a profile. You need to connect. You need to stay in touch. You need to stay in communication with people. You need to find reasons to reach out to contacts. You go to the greatest university in America with one of the largest alumni bases ever. There should be plenty of ways for you to reach out and connect, to an alumni base who knows someone that can make connections for you. I got my job at Nike because a woman I worked with at Ketchum Public Relations in Chicago, she was also a Buckeye. She left, had enough of the agency world, and I lost track of her for about 3 years. And out of the blue, she called me one day said she was in Los Angeles working for Nike and she thought I'd have a great time out there. And I said, well, it's not that easy, but keep me in mind. And sure enough, that's how I got my job at Nike. I got my job at Home Depot because of a contact at Nike who was on a board with my soon-to-be boss at Home Depot. So I guess I could transition for a moment, Nicole, into, advice and how I got where I am. It's finding the right contacts at the right time. There's never a time to stop and say, okay, I should leave my job now. What we're experiencing now, these last 6 weeks, is about the closest you'll come to the world stopping. But there's never a great time to just say, should I take this job or not? A lot of it is gut feel. A lot of it is where you are in your career at that point. It just so happens that I went agency, then corporate, and then nonprofit, all in a linear fashion. It was not intended that way. But as I look back, I think it's the simple tenets that we all preach all the time. It's connections, it's relationships, it's getting the opportunity, it's working your tail off, and it's proving your worth every single day. And, that's how my career matriculated. And, sometimes it's lucky. You work for a boss who leaves and management doesn't replace that person. They just elevate you. But again, it's because I worked hard and I proved that I could take on that challenge. And I still am in shock at times, some of the things I've gotten to do in my career. It's just remarkable.
Well, we have some questions about the Naismith and then some other ones. So I want to talk a little bit about the watch list. How did the idea of the watch list come in? And as Nick notes, it seems like it's a pretty difficult process to look ahead and put together a list of top players.
It is. If you look at any sport today, you'll see a watch list for any award given out in any sport. And a lot of it is just purely publicity. When we're getting together late October, we don't know who some of the top players will be. I can guarantee you that Obi Toppin of Dayton was on our list, but very few people immediately position him as the lead person to win the award. The watch list dates decades. Since I started here in 2007, it was already in place. One of the biggest changes I made, and this hits close to home for all you Buckeyes and to you specifically, Nicole, is the old Tipoff Club, which was the group of people that ran it before I got hired, had a theory that no freshmen or transfers were eligible to be on the watch list.
Oh.
I couldn't answer why that was. It makes no sense because if you're competing this season, you should be considered, eligible to win the award. You should be on a watch list. Well, there were 2 freshmen that year that were not allowed to be on the watch list. One was Kevin Durant, who went on to win the award, and the other was Greg Oden, who was our high school Naismith winner the previous season in high school in Indiana. And so I started late enough in the year that I couldn't make a lot of changes, but that was the first one I changed, which was, if you are playing college basketball this upcoming season, you are eligible to be considered, and therefore you're on the watch list. Now, over the years, we've refined it. It used to be our staff getting together and pouring through magazines and data and talking to sports information directors, and that became awfully cumbersome, as you can imagine. And more importantly, we didn't want to lose anybody or miss out on anybody. So I, about 5 or 6 years ago, developed a board of selectors. It's the top national basketball media who cover the sport day in and day out. And I asked them if they would help me on both the men's game and then a separate set on the women's game. And those folks are the ones who compile all of our watch lists.
What's it like when you, especially for you as a Buckeye, we'll talk about Greg Oden because we all love him. But when you see someone who, you kind of predict at that level, go on to become such an extraordinary gifted athlete and go on to success. I mean, Kevin Durant certainly has had, I know that he and Greg Oden have an interesting parallel pathway together, but, what's that like from your perspective? It almost feels like it might be a little paternal.
Yeah, what's even greater is to watch some of these kids in high school, because we give out a high school Naismith trophy. So everybody, 2 years ago, we knew who R.J. Barrett and Zion Williamson were. In fact, RJ won our high school award. So when these student athletes arrive on campus as freshmen, we already are familiar with who a lot of them are. And then to watch them their freshman year, in a lot of cases, they're one and dones and they go to the NBA. I mean, that's 3 levels in 3 years. But as we look back, it's so fun. It's so meaningful to watch them turn out great, to be wonderful human beings. So many of them give back to their alma maters or their communities through foundations. While that's not criteria for us, it still means a lot that our award that we cherish is connected to some of the best human beings on this planet, men's game and women's game. And there's a great sense of pride.
So we have a question here about the announcement being made the way it was this year. Is this something that you think that you're going to carry forward once life goes back to, I'm going to put Megan normal in quotes for us?
I would answer that by saying, if we had to, we now know that this system works. There's still no greater feeling than to be on stage at the Final Four and present the Naismith Trophy to that winner. You ask a Heisman Trophy winner, you ask winner of any award, and he or she will tell you to be able to receive that in person, then there's no greater accomplishment or feeling. But it's a great question, because not just us, everybody. I mean, how about the NFL draft? How successful was the NFL draft? And not just picking 250 some odd players, but to have the insight into the homes of the coaches and the GMs and the families. They stumbled onto something that I don't think anybody thought would happen. And now it was a huge success, and they may grow in the future doing something similar. So we could do it. We might try to implement something like that announcement throughout the season, whether it's the midseason team or the 4 semifinalists. But I think we're going to try to stick to the in-person presentation at the Final Four if we can.
I think we all want to be at the Final Four if we can.
Yeah, no doubt.
Barbara's asking about the selection committee. How many people are on there? How long they remain on there? Do they rotate off? Kind of how does that selection committee work?
Barbara, that's a great question, and I don't mean to be coy. I don't say how many people, and I don't say who they are just out of respect for the process. It's a very small subset. They stay on as long as they want to contribute. You know, some people change jobs or they leave college basketball, they go to college football or the pro game, and then they're not necessarily a great fit. But as long as they contribute, I will keep them on. And to follow up on that selection committee gets us through until we're down to 10 semifinalists. And then we open it up to a master voting academy of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of voters. And they vote the lists from 10 semifinalists down to 4 finalists, and then come back 2 weeks later and pick the winner. And that consists of our board of directors, media, former winners, college coaches, conference commissioners. So it's a wider range. But we felt the group to whittle the list down should be people who live in the sport and that's their job, and then make it more concise for the broader audience to go ahead and pick our winner. Great question.
And Richard's asking if anyone can win it more than once.
Absolutely. What's interesting, Richard, that's a great question too. What's interesting is over the years, when you look back at the former winners, there's a bit of a gap because a lot of these high school winners went right to the NBA. So Kobe Bryant never won the college award. LeBron never won it. Dwight Howard never won it. It's more so on the women's side because most women stay in college 4 years. Some of them leave after 3 if they're eligible. And same in high school. We could have a high school winner his or her junior year, and they could come back and win it again as a senior. So I think we have on the women's game, what's interesting to me is how many have won a high school Naismith Trophy and a college Naismith Trophy. Obviously, there's more on the women's because when they get to college, they might win it as a sophomore or junior. Most men, if they're good enough to win it as a freshman, they're not going to stick around. Ironically, there's only one player in the history of our awards who has won the Naismith on the men's side in high school and college. we were in person, I'd have a swag bag and I'd give it to the person who got the answer right.
Well, let's see if anyone can guess it. Can anyone
All right.
guess who this would be? So you put in the comment box if you can guess who the player is that's won both the high school and the college Naismith Award. We'll see what answers we get.
No cheating.
And while we're waiting for these to come in, yeah, nobody looked this up on Google. Come on, let's see what we can do. Marissa has a question about how long you've been awarding to women.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the men's Naismith Trophy was first given out in 1969 to a gentleman named Lou Alcindor at UCLA, later known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And then in 1983, we started presenting to the Women's Player of the Year. It went to the late Ann Donovan from Old Dominion. Ann passed away a couple years ago, tragically. She was a wonderful ambassador for the game and for the Naismith Awards.
All right, well, we've had some great, let's see, we have some guesses here, so let's get to those.
Okay.
So our guesses range from Aaron Kraft, Danny Manning, Kareem, a name I do not recognize, and Steph Curry.
None of those are your answer, but if you would like me to give you a hint.
Let's get a hint, and then we'll see if we can. Nathan, I'm looking at you. I'm waiting for you to come up with this. Come on.
The hint is the player who won it in high school and college, his college was in the ACC.
Isn't everything happening in the ACC? We can't
it's a little hint, not a big hint.
All right. We have any more guesses here coming from the ACC as we'll keep our questions coming? We have Michael Jordan is a guess. Zion.
We're getting warmer.
Oh, we're getting warmer, everybody. All right. Well, while we're getting some more guesses in, we have a great question about what you think about the G League and how that will affect college basketball.
You know, it's interesting. I just had this conversation the other day with someone. It's very split. It's very polarizing. Some people think it'll be the death of college basketball, and other people think it won't even be a blip. I don't have enough feeling towards it to comment one way or another, but I kind of liken it to all these underclassmen who declare early to go to the NBA draft, not realizing how few spots there really are. You know, in the G League, there's not a ton of spots and there's not a ton of money. And, you know, I saw John Calipari had a great comment the other day, which was, would someone be better going to a major university and getting a year's worth of exposure under that program than quickly jumping to the G League and making some money? Because we haven't seen it play out enough. My concern would be, are you playing against a good enough competition that when NBA scouts evaluate you, they feel like you're ready to go to the league? Maybe so, maybe not. So I'm curious, like the rest of you, to see really how it goes. You know, let's get a few cycles through and get a bigger sample size to see if it really does work. If it does, it is going to have an impact on college basketball. But I think it's still too early to tell.
Well, now this parallel, you know, decision coming down from the NCAA about name, image, and likeness, that's certainly going to affect basketball players. I mean, you know, so how do you think we balance all of these things? You know, and then I don't know, I'm sure you're familiar with Ricky Valente's efforts with the Historical Basketball League. You know, there's lots of moving pieces here. What does college basketball look like in 10 years, do you think?
I think it's going to be the same as college football and a lot of our varsity sports. I think they're going to be even more feeder systems or minor leagues for the pro leagues. There's a lot going on that you're starting to see come out between name, image, and likeness. Just the basketball season getting canceled and the NCAA not being able to pay their member institutions what they have done in the past. You know, I'm speaking now as Eric Oberman and not tied to the Naismith Awards, but as just a fan, I do wonder if and when conferences are going to split off and just form their own super conferences. I hope for the game and the sport and what we have in college athletics, it doesn't come to that. But as you read the tea leaves and you start to see things progress, you just can't help but wonder if that's where we're headed. At the end of the day, you can't deny somebody the opportunity to make money. I mean, Nicole, some of your students, if right now they took a hiatus or they left school after their junior year to go be, the greatest sports marketer ever, even without a degree, how do you deny them that? And I think we've heard that a lot with athletes. I just think the pressure is going to grow to a point where I don't know that it can be policed, and therefore a lot of these men and women, may take that opportunity to go make money professionally. So, I'm watching like everybody else. Selfishly, if I put my Naismith hat back on, it won't affect us, because if the Zions and RJ Barretts and the Cole Anthonys and the Obi Toppins, if they go right to the G League and they're never going to play college basketball, the talent at the top will be diminished, but they're still going to be the best of the rest. And that person is still going to be the player of the year. So we will still award that student athlete. But I hope from a competition standpoint and an excitement standpoint, I hope it continues on the path that we're going. I just think there's going to be some significant changes coming over the next few years.
No question. All right, we got a few more guesses here.
Okay.
It's got Grant Hill. Stephen has Christian Leitner. Ashley has Phil Ford. Nathan threw in JJ Reddick. Sean Battier from Randy. We get warm, cold.
If it's Randy Deneen, he doesn't count, because I probably already told him the answer. But yes, it is Shane Battier.
Oh, Randy, did you ruin it for everyone? He says you did not. Tell him who it was.
All right. He's just a smart person. It's Shane Battier. He won the award as a high school senior in Detroit, Michigan. And what's really unbelievable is when he won it at Duke, he was a senior. So think about this. If you're one of the best high school players and you go to college, what are the odds you're going to stay beyond 1 year, let alone all 4? But he did. And as a senior, he won it in 1991. So he's the only male to win the high school and the college Naismith Trophy. Good job, Randy.
Good job, Randy. Randy was also wondering about when the high school awards started.
Yeah, the high school awards, the player of the year started in 1987. The first winner was Dennis Scott from Chesapeake, Virginia, who went on to Georgia Tech and played on that amazing 1990 Georgia Tech Final Four team. And the coach of the year, it's interesting, when I got to this job, I asked that very question. I said, why do we not present to the coach of the year? Some of these high school coaches are legends. Players come and go, but coaches are the ones that really make the program. And a couple people in the room looked at me and said, great, go do it. Like, they didn't know where to begin. So in 2008, my second year in this role, we created a national Naismith High School Boys and Girls Coach of the Year Award. So I guess that's 12 years now we've been presenting that. And then our most recent award that we created was 2 years ago, the Naismith Defensive Player of the Year Award. So we've had 3 winners of that award now. I don't see us creating any new ones. We don't want to water it down. We feel like 14 is a lot to give out, or 7 categories, I should say. And, we want to make sure that we're propping those up to be as special as they are, as opposed to continually adding. But we're very happy with our family of awards right now.
It's funny whenever we talk about high school basketball, it's always such there's different layers to it. And, you've seen this evolve from relative purity, especially when you're talking about when the high school awards started in the 80s, moving forward through AAU. And, now you have these basketball academies that are just seemingly, becoming these all-star teams that then, produce high-level college players. What's your take on that in terms of how this has evolved and how, high school has really high school basketball specifically, or that age level, seems to really represent a professionalization of youth sports?
Without question, Nicole. It's one of the questions and the discussions we have every year about this award, especially when I bring on a new voter. He or she might ask, what do I base this on? Their high school season or their AAU team? And at first I couldn't believe they would even ask that. And when you stop and think, there's far greater competition in its shortened season, but in the summer season on the AAU circuit. Because in the high school season, and Zion is a great example, when you play on a team that doesn't have the greatest competition, it's hard to measure one player against the next. Whereas the AAU travel team circuit, pretty level. So to see both of them evolve, we've had that discussion every year when we go through the voting. You know, any award you could say, is it a one season award or is it a career achievement? How did that player do over 4 years? But then the next topic is, well, their AAU team was great and he or she did X, Y, and Z at this tournament last summer. Okay, but we're honoring high school players. So it's an ongoing debate. You know, the good thing about the summer season is it gives us a leg up on knowing who the top seniors are, juniors and seniors coming into the season. But it does have people, their perspective on the players and the voting has changed a lot based on, what do I base it on? You know, the summer travel team or the current high school season?
That leads me to the question of what's going to happen now, because we're not going to have the same summer season. If we have any summer season at all, I'm like so popular today. We're not going to have any summer season potentially. You know, we have a huge question as to what that's going to mean moving forward to teams, generally speaking. But you know, what will it mean for you?
Well, one thing we instituted this year on the high school side is we typically do at the end of the year the winners, and we do an All-America team. So 5 first-team All-Americans, 5 second-team, 5 third-team, and 15 honorable mention. For the first time ever, we did an underclass All-America team. All the way down to freshmen, and LeBron's son, Bronny, is a freshman, and he was on that team. But we did that for 2 reasons. One, it gives us another publicity opportunity to talk about our award, but it gives us the opportunity to look out a few years to see who are some of the top talented players that are making their way up. So although we won't see them on the summer circuit, our voters know who a lot of them are. If you look at recruiting and rankings, we kind of have an idea who some of the top players will be next year. And again, you know, if we're only basing it on the high school season, then we shouldn't really be paying too much attention until we get to November when the season actually starts.
Do you think that we have the potential that we're not going to be starting in November, or that, I mean, we obviously don't know what's going to happen, but there's a lot of things in play now?
I don't know, Nicole. Every day I hope and pray that I see a story that something is coming back. You know, if you look at it from college basketball, from our sport, well, high school basketball, we were fortunate that the season ended before all this took place. So we announced our winners. We didn't get to present to them, but we announced the winners, season ended. College basketball got hit the hardest because we were right at the doorstep of the biggest 3 weeks of our season. So yeah, poor me, we had an abrupt end to our season. At the same time, we have the longest wait time now before we have to decide if and when we'll be up and running. So I think college basketball will look at the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, college football, MLB, to see how they can get back to some sort of normalcy. I just saw today NASCAR's coming back in a few weeks with a bunch of races without fans. The MLB proposal's gaining steam. So I think from a college hoop standpoint, we have the longest wait time, which is good because based on what everybody else does, we'll have something to react to. What'll be interesting is, let's say hypothetically college football is a delayed start. What if they delayed basketball too? You know, what if they waited till January to start the college hoop season and took it all the way, you know, into May? It's little things. And for those of you, you know, students that are looking to get into this sport, it's things that you wouldn't think about initially. The Final Four. So I talked to some folks in Indianapolis today as we plan for next year's Final Four. The dates are locked in. So if the NCAA just wanted to push the Final Four to mid-May, it's not that easy. There's hotel concerns, there's venue concerns. So it's things like that that help drive discussions and decisions. I hope we get back to some sort of normalcy soon. I couldn't hazard a guess, but again, we have the longest wait period to see what everyone else does, and then we'll just react accordingly.
So I have to say I was incredibly impressed that you remember as many names as you do and the years that people win things. And Barbara, I'm guessing, is equally impressed. And she's also wondering if are there other sports, pro or college, that you avidly follow?
I am a diehard Major League Baseball fan. Played it since I was 6 years old. Diehard Reds fan. I was actually looking forward to this season because I'm thinking they actually may have a good team. It's been crushing me that they're not playing baseball. If I had to rank sports in terms of a fan, Major League Baseball and college football are 1A and 1B for me. College basketball is third. The NFL is fourth. And the NBA is a distant fifth. I'm really not a huge fan of the NBA, to be really honest. It's such a different game than college. And I think when you work in a sport, sometimes it's good to not be a huge fan of it, because I wouldn't think as clearly or as strategically, or my judgment would be a lot more clouded. So obviously I love college hoops. I follow the NBA, but I'm not a big time fan.
It's funny, as a sports writer, we joke about that the fastest way to not be a fan of sports anymore is to be a sports writer, because you can't be. And then, you're in the position of sometimes you know more than you want to know. So that leads me to my next question of, do you have any good stories, behind the scenes stories about players that we would know, that things that maybe we don't know about them, or experiences that you've shared?
I can share some of the experiences of presenting the awards. I'll never forget, in 2008 in San Antonio, Tyler Hansbrough of North Carolina was our winner. And for those of you who remember, the night before we presented him the award, Carolina got blown out of the building by Kansas in the semifinals of the Final Four. And walking back to our hotel, I got a call from the North Carolina SID, who was still in the locker room, like the game had just ended 10 minutes prior. And he said, "Okay, where do you need Tyler tomorrow, and what are we doing?" And my first thought was, how professional was that from a sports information director to make sure we were taken care of? And at the same time, the absolute hurt on his face, you could tell it meant a lot to win this trophy. You could tell it meant 100 times more to be playing for a national championship. And he was graceful, and Roy Williams was graceful, but he was hurting so bad. Same with John Calipari. In 2015, his team was 38-0, and he won our Naismith Coach of the Year award. And they lost in the semifinals to Wisconsin on Saturday night. And he still showed up at our brunch on Sunday morning to accept his award. And he was crushed. I mean, he was absolutely just beaten down and sad. And he handled himself like a trooper. So, behind the scenes stories, I really only get to know these guys as college freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. They're still kids in my eyes. So what they've gone on to become, if you were to say, well, can you believe so-and-so did X, Y, and Z? When I spent the weekend with them, they were 19 years old. They were still pretty young. And it's beyond just the winners. It's the finalists. 2012, Draymond Green was one of our finalists from Michigan State, and he was the most quiet, down-to-earth, humble. I mean, he still is. He's not as quiet, but, we see them before they get to the NBA, and they really emerge into their personas, and people today see them a lot different than we saw them back in the day.
What are your thoughts about Ohio State basketball, the season that they had? They've lost some pretty key players moving forward. What do you think?
Yeah, I was pretty bummed out because I felt Chris had that team just ready to explode. I felt that January was a tough month, and they rebounded and they had an unbelievable finish, coupled with the fact that there really wasn't a marquee team that was going to run away with it. I felt there were a dozen teams who could have won the title. And selfishly, the Final Four was in Atlanta, so my first year on the job was 2007 when the Final Four was in Atlanta. And, oh, by the way, the Buckeyes were here. So I really felt like they were right where they needed to be. It was concerning that a lot of guys left the program. But as I've read in some articles, it was equally as impressive as they replaced them. We got some great high-caliber kids, some quality players on and off the court. And I think that speaks volumes. I think with the transfer portal and student athletes having the ability so quickly and easily to just move on when they want, you're going to see so much more of that. It's not necessarily reflective of the coach, the university, the team. It's the me, it's the me personality. I want to play right now. If I can't play here, I'll go somewhere else. But I think Chris is building a winner of a program. I'm so excited to see next season because I think they're going to do some amazing things.
It is interesting, though, you see, because we're even seeing players that got plenty of playing time. I mean, the Luther Muhammad situation, where he appeared poised to be, arguably the star of that team, or certainly one of them, and still transferred. I recognize what the portal has done, but where do you think that's going to take us in terms of this ability to move? There's a lot to be said for team chemistry that we're now going to have to rebuild all new chemistry. How do you think that's going to affect team?
It's already changed recruiting because you have coaches now recruiting the portal,
right.
Which is unheard of. I think it goes to your question a few minutes ago, Nicole, about where do we see college sports going? Our conference is going to split off and form their own. I'll tell you, from what I read, if the college football season doesn't happen, it's more than just us as fans being bummed out for 12 Saturdays in the fall. There are some athletic departments who are in serious jeopardy of going under. I think you're watching right now, the seriousness of the virus, obviously, and the number of folks who've lost their lives is tragic. Well, after this is over, you're going to look at the economic hit and you're going to look at sports too. And it is very unsettling if you read. So I think they go hand in hand, athletic departments and students having the ability to make money off their names and their likenesses, as well as the freedom to transfer when they want. It's going to feel like a pickup game. It really is. You're not going to say, well, Nicole was a sophomore. I can't wait for her to come back as a junior and be a star next year. It's going to be, oh, she's gone. Well, let's get that person and let's get that person. And it's going to be even a harder coaching job to mesh those personalities to form a really good team. And, it's going to be tough. It's going to be completely different than what we're used to.
Well, let me just thank you for identifying me as a basketball player at 5'1". I'm extremely offended by that. I also, there's so many pieces, and I'm privileged to have gotten to know you, pretty well over the last year. And so many times in this conversation, you've talked about kids and the importance of players as people and giving advice to our students. And, you give back so much by being a mentor, through the university. You host students as interns. You created an internship program and reached out to us to make sure that we included Ohio State students. Can you kind of talk us through a little bit about your motivation, what your thought process is, and maybe how we could inspire other people to similarly be engaged with us?
Absolutely, Nicole. It's been great getting to know you and Randy and Todd. As I told all three of you, you get to a point in your life where you realize, you take stock and you see what's important. And Ohio State's always been important to me, but I really wasn't doing much in the way of giving back. And so it's been as much a thrill and a privilege for me to give back as anybody. We're going through a period where I'm sure everyone has seen that we're being more considerate of others. We're taking stock of things. And I think, that's hugely important. From my standpoint and the university and students, it comes down to one thing. When I was 21, 22, 24, 26, I didn't start my career until I was 26, by the way. I remember people along the way who were there for me, who stopped what they were doing to help me. I don't know why. Maybe it was a friend of a friend. Somebody owed somebody a favor. Somebody lost a bet. I don't know. But there were people that went out of their way to help me. And I feel that that's our job to give back. And I do. Every student I interact with, I speak a lot to the students here in Georgia. I tell all of them, if you need advice or you just want to pick my brain, and I'll extend it to everybody on this Zoom, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help. I feel it's our duty, but it's something I want to do. And as it pertains to students at Ohio State, I'd be thrilled to talk to each of you if you have questions or you need advice. But that's really where it started, Nicole, is people were there for me, and we all need to replace ourselves, and we all need to give back. And, some of that is selfish, right? And meeting you and Randy and Todd, it's helped me get some unbelievable interns for our Naismith Awards, which this year was just the beginning. They were great, and in the future they'll be even better. So it helps me from a work perspective, but it helps me as an alum too. It's something I really want to do. As I said earlier, each of you need to have a profile on LinkedIn. I would highly suggest you find a mentor, either through the university or just a friend of a friend, but somebody older who you can go to for advice and counsel that's not your parents is critical. I mean, I've got a whole list, which I won't go through, but there's a lot of things I think are important when we're talking to young men and women who are looking to start their careers.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Eric, I am just so honored and privileged that you were here with us today. I'm sure I speak for everyone. Just thank you so much for your insights and for all that you do and all that you've given back to the university. It has been a privilege. Everybody, I want to let you know that we will be back next Thursday. We're having a really extraordinary conversation around high school sports. So as much as college sports have been impacted by the COVID crisis, our high school student athletes, especially the ones with spring sports, really are suffering through a very difficult time that's going to affect them and their potential to engage in their sport at a collegiate level. It's going to affect them psychologically, physiologically, a lot of different ways. So we're bringing in Tom Ferry from the Aspen Institute, who's a good friend of our program. We have from Ohio High School Athletic Association, their executive director, Jerry Snodgrass, is going to be here. We have players and parents who are going to join us to talk about what their experience has been. So that will be a week from today. And then 2 weeks from today, we are really excited that we are bringing in some of our really prominent walk-ons that have been on our basketball teams who want to share their story to talk about what it's been like to be a walk-on. And Joey Lane is joining us for sure, so he's very excited to do that. So I hope that you will all be back with us. I hope that you'll give me join me in giving a virtual round of applause to my good friend Eric Oberman, and we hope to see you all back here next week. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it.